Okay, everybody is here. Cousins by the dozens. I am just thrilled that you all could come and help Laura and Liza and me celebrate the amazing Preston's birthday. And we're going to be doing some talking about Preston, I'm sure. I'm not the only one who's going to be talking about Preston. But I thought I would start by saying just a few words about this family. The thing about this family, I mean, it's an unusual family, not just because there are a lot of unusual people in it, which there certainly are, but because of its sense of family, its cohesion, its sense of the family history, and all centered right here on the West River is really quite remarkable. And I got to thinking that Preston is the oldest in our generation, we all know, if I said to you Captain Oscar, you would know who Captain Oscar was, or almost all of you would know who Captain Oscar was, and yet who actually knew him? So I thought, well, except for Preston and me and Alma and Maryland, probably very...
And us too.
And, but very few people knew both of them together. Captain Oscar and Miss Alice, otherwise known as Granddaddy and Grandmama, very few people actually grew up with them when they were in their prime. For many of us, Granddaddy had already died when we came along, and Grandmama, her strongest point when she was at her prime was her memory. And that's what she lost. I mean, that was the great cruelty for Grandmama. So I think a lot of you knew Grandmama, but not when she was in her prime. So I thought I would just say just a few words about them in their prime. Preston and I first came to Galesville to live during World War II, when our father went overseas. He enlisted in the Navy. And incidentally, a lot of your fathers, 6 of our uncles also were either in the Navy, the Merchant Marines, the Coast Guard. I don't think anybody was in the Army. We didn't do Army. So the men had gone, and our mother brought us to live with Grandmama and Granddaddy in the big house. This was 1944. Preston was 8, and I was 5. And we then had the 2 happiest years of our childhood. I mean, we would both agree. It was wonderful. In the water all the time, in the boats all the time, with these wonderful grandparents. Our grandfather was magnetic. Everybody loved him. He loved everybody. He just drew everyone to him in the most remarkable way. And he was fun. He fooled around with the kids. There weren't that many at that time in our generation. We have Marilyn and Alice and Toch, who were his nieces and nephews. But of his grandchildren, we were pretty much first, and so we got all their attention, and he was a lot of fun. The only time you didn't mess with Granddaddy was when you were on a boat. He was serious on a boat. That's right. You didn't, no fooling around on the boat. Grandmama, I don't even think she learned how to swim because she was so busy. 11 kids doing everything. And if a snake needed killing, she killed it. If a chicken needed decapitating, and I'm choosing my words for the twins who were, she could do that too while she was cooking and doing the hen houses. And so it was basically something close to subsistence farming and living off the water that she did remarkably well. She was better educated than Granddaddy was, and education mattered to her. So she cared that all 11 kids went to school and did reasonably well. I think as it went along and the boys got younger, they were skittering away. Anyway, that's what it was like for Preston and me. Now, Preston. Preston, I worshiped the ground he walked on because he always seemed to have things figured out. it was never the way the whole gang thought it was. When we were growing up in Arlington, and there was a whole batch of kids there, and I was always kind of running around with the kids, and whatever the kids thought, I thought too. And Preston would say, he'd sidle up from time to time and say, "No, that's not true. Yes, that's true. No, don't do that. Don't do it." And, you know, sometimes he basically saved my life. He said, "Don't light up hollow reeds and smoke them like cigarettes, because you don't know what little creatures are in there you're taking into your lungs when you inhale those." He was just kind of giving me little nudges, being a third parent, but one who actually knew what was going on. I mean, my two parents didn't know what was going on, but he kind of watched what was happening to me, and he protected me, not in what you would call a loving, fuzzy way, but in a sort of corrective way. And as he has put it, he spent his childhood building my character. But I always wondered how he figured everything out. I mean, just a silly little example. We play hide and seek, and if you were on the street in Arlington, and if you were it, you had your choice, which were thought to be equivalent. You had to count out loud, so you could count out loud from 1 to 100, or you could do 300 by 5s. And so you would be it, and you would decide what you were going to do, and sometimes I did 100, and sometimes I did 300 by 5s, and Preston was the kind of kid who'd sidle up and say, 300 by 5s is the best way to do it. And I thought, how do you know that? So there were a lot of things that he knew that, and I wanted his approval. I wanted to know those things too, and I always wondered how he knew it. The other thing he had a way of doing was sort of kind of standing back and watching things. He was always very quiet in whatever he did. And then he'd kind of sidle up and say something, but sometimes he wouldn't say anything at all. And I'm going to tell you just one more story about Preston and I when we lived in Galesville. I told it to LCB and I told it to Tricia, but I just love this story. I was 5, and this was the days of real free-range parenting. I mean, our parents, whatever we did, that was okay. And so I decided, I was 5, and my mom had taught me how to row in the little Alice, the rowboat that Granddaddy built and named after his wife, the little Alice. And so I thought I wanted to row across the river from the wharf in front of the big house to Aunt Elsie's on Chalk Point by myself. Sure, she says. So she said to Preston, "Watch her. Sit in the front yard and watch her." She was too busy to watch me. I don't know what she was doing that was more important. Maybe she was writing to my father. But this 5-year-old, no life jacket. I don't think I had a life jacket on. And so I started rowing across to Chalk Point. And I got about halfway there. And there's some disagreement still between the two of us as to what happened. But what happened was a gale force wind
out of nowhere
swept up and was sweeping me out to the Chesapeake Bay just like that. So I did what any 5-year-old would do. I stood up in the boat and I screamed. And so Preston says that there wasn't a gale, but he agrees. He thinks everything was just fine, but he agrees that I start to scream. And I screamed so loud that pretty soon a flotilla of boats started to converge on me from the boatyard and from all the houses around the river. And they finally, I guess Aunt Elsie finally rowed out from Chalk Point and tied me up and towed me in. So then back home, the phone starts to ring, and Mom starts to hear from everybody around West River that her little girl was out screaming in the middle of the river, and all these boats had to come out. So she was furious, and she went down to Preston, who was still sitting there in the front yard. And she said, "I told you to watch her." And he said, "Oh yeah, I was watching, it was really interesting. So,
Thanks pretty literally.
She didn't tell you to go rescue her, did she?
anyway, he is my beloved brother and friend, and I wish him the happiest of birthdays, and many more, not just for him, but because Laura and Liza and I wouldn't know what to do without him. So, good health for a long time. Insult Preston. Laura?
I'm really thrilled that all these people are here because you are all the most important people in Preston's life, as you know. That's why you're here. And family means everything to him. And he is my source of all information about the Harcheys and their various others who come with them. And so he's a font of historical information about the family and also connections to everyone here. And that says a lot about who he is. And it's been wonderful for me to live relatively close to him, even when he moved out to, we're not supposed to call it Little Washington.
Nope.
You call it, nope, not Little, to Washington, Virginia.
Oh, Big Washington.
Big Washington. So when he moved out to Big Washington, and I found myself a mere hour and change away from him. It's been wonderful to be able to have my uncle and also my children's great uncle so close, and they've, for them to grow up knowing him so well, and they called him Petton originally because that was the best they could do, and they've come around to calling him Preston, and they love him as we do, and so I just want to say that you're the best uncle anybody could want, and happy birthday.
And I'll just add to that briefly. Yeah, there's a lot of uncles in the room, but I have to say that Preston is the best uncle and the best great uncle. He is just so loving and loyal and wonderful to his nieces and to his great nephews. He came out to Santa Fe and built a jungle gym for my kids, and he's just the best. And he's, he may be a bachelor, but he's taught me what family is. Thank you, Preston.
Well,
anybody else have some objections?
The Ryans and I understand are the only people here who aren't kin or married kin or something. But we came down from the hills because we couldn't miss this. The Ryans have the harder part. They have to live next to him. But Preston and I work together in the church and the fire department. We've built buildings. We've organized outreach efforts. We've done all kinds of things. And you're right. He always has the answer. And he always knows what the information is. And he must have been genetically an engineer or something, before he got there. But he's also one of my best friends, and I'm really grateful to be here to celebrate this.
that's And I have to say that, well, 80 years ago I was born and brought home to a loving family, and then a couple of short years later, they brought this home. And my life has never been the same. But, I've gotten used to her. She's my best friend. She's always been well, she knows the answers to everything, and yeah, and she's.
This isn't about my birthday. This is
Okay. That's enough then.
I would have to say about, I'm sorry, I'm the outsider here, but I feel like I know a lot of y'all because I've heard about y'all proudly from him.
Well, let's without further ado cut the cake or light the candle, whatever the heck we're gonna
But
do.
80 candles you have to blow out.
Sing happy birthday.
Yeah.
Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear Preston. Happy birthday to you.
No.
Just pretend.
Just pretend.
Yeah, let's Yeah, please. Hard to pretend. Okay, here we go. 1, 2.